Well, good evening. My name is D.C. Veale, and I minister for youth, young adults, and missions here at Glenmar. It's been a while since I preached at Glenmar, a number of years actually, and I don't think I've ever preached on a Saturday evening worship, so it's quite a treat tonight, maybe more for me than for you all. I was originally quite honored when Pastor Jen asked me if I was available to preach on Saturday, but my pride began to dissipate when I learned that choices A, B, and C were unavailable. So then I thought, hey, you know what, at least D's a passing grade, so here I am, option D. Hopefully you'll grade me out as at least passing by the end. Now, when I was younger, in my childhood and teen years, I loved to chew bubble gum. I rarely chew gum today because I have issues with my jaw, but as a youth, I really loved to chew gum. I would always chew gum when I played baseball. I'd get a big wad of gum in my cheek and try to look like the big league players. My friends and I used to have bubble gum blowing contests to see who could blow the biggest bubble. Eventually, we became pretty talented, and the bubbles would actually get to the point where they were bigger than our whole heads. And of course, the fun of blowing the bubble quickly goes away when it bursts. As you might suspect, the bigger the bubble, the bigger the mess. When it breaks. Now, I remember one time very vividly when my sister blew an exceptionally large bubble only to have it burst and blow back into her hair. Now, I learned by observation that bubble gum and long hair don't mix well. My sister had the gum stuck all through her hair and made big clumps. There was a lot of crying that evening when my mother used peanut butter and a comb to detangle the mess. And even that wasn't enough for some of the toughest clumps. So my sister got an unexpected and an unwanted new hairstyle. The lesson I learned was that there are times when sticky can be a bad thing. Now, I think we have an image up there. I just want you to take a look. The image you're seeing comes from a particular place. Anyone know what city that might be? Hey, all right, there we go. Yes, it is Pittsburgh. Now, I'm using that picture not out of any desire to talk about the Pirates, who are finally in the playoffs after 21 straight losing years. But, when I think of Pittsburgh, I always think of bridges. I guess when you have a major city built where three big rivers exist, you're going to have a lot of bridges. In any event, I want you to picture a bridge in your own mind. It doesn't have to be from Pittsburgh, maybe the Bay Bridge or the Francis Scott Key Bridge or a little bridge over a stream or something. Just picture a bridge. Now I want you to imagine that on one side of the bridge is graduation from high school. And on the other side is the completion of college and emerging adulthood. Now, according to the book Sticky Faith by Kara Powell and Chap Clark, the most recent research shows that 40 to 50% of kids who grow up in the church end up leaving their faith and the church after high school. In other words, roughly 1 in 2 kids cross the bridge with their faith intact, which is far too low a percentage. Of those who fall away, 80% say they intended to cross the bridge well, that was their intention, but they still struggled and fell. And this actually means that overall, 10% of our youth actually intended to leave their faith after high school, which is a different message for a different time. The Fuller Youth Institute, or FYI, basically the youth ministry part of Fuller Seminary in Pasadena, California, was hearing and feeling some of the same things that those of us who work with youth have felt for years, that too many youth seem to disappear from church after high school. So they got a grant to enable them to do a long-term study of youth ministry behaviors and faith behaviors in students. They studied a group of high school seniors who were active with their church youth groups and tracked them for 3 years following their high school graduation to see how their attitudes and behaviors about their faith lives changed or evolved. The researchers had to first articulate exactly what it was they were looking for. They decided that they were looking for signs of ongoing spiritual maturity. This would show up as both internal and external attitudes and behaviors. Students in the study would need to show that they not only believed in the need for a spiritual connection and felt the desire to have one, but also took concrete actions to strengthen their faith lives through prayer, Bible study, church attendance, participation in a small group, and so forth. The commitment needed to be both personal and communal. In other words, students needed to recognize not only the need to focus on their own growth, but also demonstrate connection to the larger body of Christ as well. And finally, students needed to show that their faith was in process, that they were not a finished product, but still growing and changing. The researchers determined that what they were trying to quantify was a faith that was truly owned by the students, a faith that stuck to them, sticky faith. In other words, there are times when sticky can be a good thing. After doing their longitudinal study over the course of years, FYI began publishing the results and also their conclusions and observations about how to help people develop sticky faith. I've been attending the Youth Specialties National Youth Worker Convention for about 20 years. Roughly 7 or 8 years ago, I sat in on the first Sticky Faith seminar that was just releasing the results of the first study and discussing the implications. Everything I heard just confirmed the thoughts and feelings that I'd had for a long time. I was excited to hear someone articulate so clearly what I had been sensing. And I was even more excited to hear that the research actually provided suggestions on help to grow sticky faith in youth. I was so excited that I came back to Glenmar and did nothing. Now, I went back the next year and sat in on the seminar again and continued to do so for several more years. Each time I heard the basic information about sticky faith, which just reinforced in my mind how important a concept it was. And I was also hearing each year the release of new information with new implications. Now, I always left the conference with a determination to do something about it, but the busyness of life at Glenmar always seems to get in the way. Now, remember, folks, I'm choice D, so maybe not the brightest option here. So finally, a couple years ago, 2 years ago, I decided to take some concrete action. And I started doing the Next Step class for high school seniors. The purpose of Next Step is to help prepare seniors for life after graduation, for the next step in their lives. I continued to attend the Sticky Faith seminars each year, and I tweaked Next Step to include juniors and seniors. Now, last year when I attended the Youth Worker Convention, I heard about a cohort opportunity. I went to the Sticky Faith seminar, heard about something called a cohort. Basically, the Fuller Youth Institute offers a chance for churches to come together for a year of shared learning and insights into sticky faith. The cohort provides access to some of the leading youth ministry thinkers both at Fuller and throughout the country. In addition, cohort members have the opportunity to access the experiences and wisdom of the other churches in the cohort process. Now, Glenmar is enrolled in the Sticky Faith cohort for this year, 2013. We're one of 17 churches from different denominations from around the country who are working to discern what actions and changes we want to see within our congregation to help everyone have sticky faith. As part of the cohort process, we sent 4 of our staff members to a Sticky Faith summit at Fuller back in February. We returned and we formed a Sticky Faith ministry team that's been meeting every 3 weeks with staff and lay members. We began by gathering stories from people. We tried to have as many one-on-one conversations as we could just to hear people's unique and individual experiences of their own faith journey. We didn't have any specific questions or agenda, just a desire to hear as wide a range of stories as possible. Some of the questions we asked included things like, what was the most formative faith experience you had as a teen? What is your experience of church? What brought you to Glenmar? What does your child like or not like about church, Sunday school, or youth group? Through these stories and from feedback from lots of other people and from our study of the Sticky Faith research and resources, we've slowly begun to see areas we think could be strengthened in the Glenmar faith community. Now, prior to my coming to Glenmar, I was a youth minister at a United Methodist church in LaGrange, Georgia. Every winter, we would take the youth group on a ski trip all the way up to West Virginia. Now, one year we stayed at a place where the hotel was at the bottom of the mountain, but all the restaurants, all the food places were at the top of the mountain. So at the end of a day of skiing, we went back down to the hotel, let everyone shower and change, and then we loaded back up in the church vans and went back up to the top of the mountain for dinner. We were about 15 minutes into our meal when one of the girls in the youth group came up to me and said, "Has anyone seen my brother?" Well, a quick head count determined that we were one youth short. Now, this was back in the days before cell phones, so there was no easy way to check on things back down at the bottom of the mountain. So one of the chaperones had to drive back down, back to the hotel, find the young man, and bring him back up to eat dinner. Now, by the time they rejoined us, everyone was done eating, and we had a new youth group chant that carried on for years to come. "Where's Jonathan?" Now, from this, I learned that when we go on youth group retreats or mission trips, it's not okay to bring back most of the youth. Now, I'm sure that probably most of you have seen or read stories in the news about newborn babies being kidnapped or removed from the hospital, often by mentally ill people looking for a baby of their own. Today, more and more hospitals are starting to utilize security chips and bracelets that they put on each infant's wrist. The chip causes the hospital to go into lockdown mode when an infant leaves the floor they're supposed to be on. Recently, there was a story about a new mother who had a woman dressed as a nurse come into her hospital room and tell her that the doctor was coming to meet with her, but wanted her to take a shower first. The woman thought this was a strange request, but being a first-time mother, she just did what she was asked to. Well, when she got out of the bathroom, the nurse and the baby were gone from the room. And fortunately, it turned out that the attempted kidnapping of the baby was thwarted when the woman who was just posing as a nurse tried to use the elevator. And as soon as the security system detected the security bracelet, it shut down the elevator and locked the whole floor down. So the police arrived, things were rectified. You might ask yourselves, why would the hospital go to the time and the pretty enormous expense to install such a complex and costly security system? Because they're not willing to lose even one child. In the church, I think I would challenge us to say that we need to stop accepting as adequate that we get most kids launched in their faith post-high school. We must stop looking up every 4 or 5 years asking, "Where's Jonathan?" Now, the cohort has asked each of the participating churches to develop a breakthrough plan. Basically, this is a list of priorities focusing on what we believe are the most important actions we can take as a church to help young people with their faith. Our ministry team has identified 3 areas we want to address, and I'd like to share them with you. They're not prioritized, they're all equally important, so don't read anything into the order in which I present them. Change area number 1 of our breakthrough plan we've called Partnering with Parents. Now, in our scripture reading tonight, we heard the story of the prophet Samuel when he was a young boy. But to put that part of the story into context, we have to go back to the first chapter of 1 Samuel. And in that, we see Samuel's mother, Hannah, was originally unable to conceive. For years, she desired a child but couldn't become pregnant. Finally, she prayed to God and said that if God would allow her to conceive and give birth to a son, that she would dedicate the child to God by giving him to Eli, the high priest, to serve God all his days. Well, God responded to her prayers, and Hannah gives birth to Samuel, and eventually she fulfills her promise and dedicates Samuel to the Lord and gives him to Eli to be raised in the tabernacle to serve God. Now, I'm not saying that families should start donating your children to the church, at least not until Matt is willing to acquire a much larger house, but the church is uniquely positioned to serve as a guide and helper to parents who seek to raise godly children. Parents, no matter what you think, no matter your experiences, the reality is that you are the single biggest influence in your child's faith life. The National Study of Church and Religion and the Sticky Faith Research both confirm that parents are the biggest factor when it comes to seeing faith in children. Now, when it comes to faith, parents get what they are. They get what they are. The strongest predictor of the faith of youth is the faith of their parents. The depth of faith, the activity level, the vitality, they all correspond to the parents' words and actions. Yet, a lot of parents seem to abandon to the church the responsibility of developing faith in their children. In youth ministry, we sometimes use the term dry cleaner parent. This refers to parents that drop off their dirty, rumpled, stained kids and want to pick them up 2 hours later, cleaned and pressed. And of course, parents don't have much of a relationship with their dry cleaners either. A youth ministry friend of mine once said at a parenting seminar to a crowd of parents, "We can't out-teach what you teach. We're not that good." So please don't think I'm up here trying to bash parents. I'm not. I know from firsthand experience how challenging it is to do a good job of parenting. I'm actually speaking to both groups of people here, the parents and the church, to say that what each of us does alone would be so much more effective together. We need to partner with parents to help them on the journey of raising their children. Now, at Glenmar, we're trying to make sure we provide a children and family component to all of our larger activities. Many of you know that we had a family worship focus in August. I hope that many of you took the opportunity to take home the package of conversation cookies each week. These were fortune cookies that instead of having fortunes, they contained a short faith-based question that could be used as a conversation starter in the house. In fact, conversations, not lectures, are one of the best ways families can help share their faith and grow the faith of those around them. Parents need to ask questions, but they also need to share about their own life. Take advantage of the seemingly endless chauffeuring we seem to do and have some faith conversations in the minivan. Share daily highs and lows. Where did you notice God? What mistake did you make today? The research shows that only 1 child in 8 talks to their mother about faith issues. 1 in 8. And what's sadder is that the statistics are 1 in 20 talking to their fathers about faith issues. Talk about both the past and the present in your spiritual journey. Parents definitely need to share their own faith story. I would say that in general, absolutely 0 kids know how their parents came to faith. The church can partner with parents by providing resources or suggestions to have these sorts of conversations. Currently, Jen Veale, who's our minister for middle school youth, and myself are trying to send home weekly sticky faith updates to parents to let the parents know what was talked about in Sunday school and in youth group and provide some suggestions of possible questions to ask their kids about the topics. The church can also provide opportunities for families to grow in their faith by providing opportunities to serve as a family. Diana Garland, in her book Inside Out, Families, Living the Faith Together, says, "Research shows that families already involved together in service to those in need also pray, read their Bibles, attend worship, share their faith with others, promote justice, and give more financially than those not serving. Serving is the most important and powerful contributor of faith for teenage and adult Christians." Now, at Glenmar, we're blessed to have an enormous number of opportunities for families to serve together. And as Minister of Missions, let's try that again. As Minister of Missions, I'll be glad to talk with you about some of the opportunities we have. Now, we also recognize that parents often need resources to deal with things they don't have the knowledge or expertise to handle. We have a new social justice ministry at Glenmar, and they're in the middle of a 3-part seminar series on human trafficking. So I'm going to throw out a date there for you, Tuesday, October 22nd. They're presenting the 2nd seminar that's dealing with how the internet and social media are used more and more to entrap kids. We want to strongly urge all parents of children and youth of all ages to attend this seminar, and we actually want middle school and high school youth themselves to come as well. Now, part of the Sticky Faith Breakthrough Plan is to be especially aware of transition times in the lives of children and the extra stress that places on parents, so that we, the church, can provide assistance. Children starting school, moving from elementary to middle school, from middle to high school, graduation. We want to be part of these joyous yet stressful times in life. Another area in the breakthrough plan is what we call worship is not just for adults. Now, as we saw in the scripture, Samuel was just a boy when he was serving in the temple. He may not have always known what to do, but he was helping with the leadership. A number of years ago, I actually used this same passage, this 1 Samuel 3, to preach a sermon called The Mosquito Ringtone. Maybe one or two of you might remember that. I talked about how the older we get, the worse our hearing becomes. Wow. We slowly lose the ability to hear the higher frequencies as we get older. And I played a number of different tones to the congregation and had people sit down when they failed to hear a certain frequency. So that at the end, the only people standing were children and teenagers and some lying adults. The point was, and the point is, that God speaks to people of all ages, and some of God's word and his desires are heard better and more accurately by younger people. How many of you have ever been to a large family holiday meal, probably at your grandparents' house? Okay, most of us have done this. I have some vivid memories of being at my grandparents' home for Thanksgiving with my mother and sister and aunts and uncles and cousins. When it came time to eat, there was the adult table and the kids' table. All right, I remember how the adults had the beautiful tablecloth and the centerpiece and cloth napkins and the Sunday china and all that. And at the kids' table, we had plastic camping plates, styrofoam cups, and a bare card table, I believe. Many churches today are what we might call two-table churches. They have totally segregated congregations. They have adult worship and youth worship, adult classes and youth classes. The old youth ministry euphemism we've used for years is the one-eared Mickey Mouse. The big church or adult worship is the big circle, and then the children and youth are the little circle off to the side, the one-eared mouse. Well, Eli did a couple of things right in today's story. First of all, he provided an opportunity for Samuel to be present. Now, of all the variables Fuller tracked in their research, intergenerational worship attendance was one of the most powerful predictors of long-term faith. Samuel was right there in the temple, not off having his own children's worship somewhere. Not only was he present, but he was serving. Children and youth will find worship attendance more meaningful when they have the opportunity to see their peers in leadership roles. It's certainly appropriate for our younger members to serve as greeters and ushers and lay readers and liturgists and singers and musicians, tech team, worship leaders, and yes, even preaching. Secondly, Eli provided guidance and wisdom when Samuel did not know what was going on. If we have a generation of youth who don't know how to worship because they're never in worship, then guess what we end up with? A generation of young adults that doesn't know how to worship. The whole idea of the August Family Worship Series was to help families experience worship together and for children and parents to see that it's not only possible, but preferable. As part of our breakthrough plan, we're trying to provide more opportunities for children and youth to be in worship together and for increased worship leadership for our younger members. We have thoughts of entire families not only worshiping together regularly, but perhaps providing leadership for a service as a family. Because of the number of people in worship on Sunday, especially at the 9:30 service, we know that change isn't going to come quickly or haphazardly, but we are thinking of ways to allow families to worship together more often. The final area in our breakthrough plan is something we call intentional intergenerational interaction. It basically means finding ways to be as intergenerational as possible with everything we do. Once again, the Sticky Faith research points out that there is an enormous value in intergenerational relationships. We're not saying that we need to eliminate all children and youth activities in ministry, but we do want to ask the question, how can we integrate youth and children more fully into the life of the church? Many of you know for years now, Glenmar has included a friend in faith component for our confirmation class curriculum. Basically, a friend in faith is an adult who serves as a mentor to the youth in the confirmation process. The friend in faith kind of acts as a guide, a traveling companion, a fellow pilgrim. It's an opportunity for the youth to develop a friendship with an adult other than their own parents. In some ways, we've gotten this right, but really we haven't quite taken it far enough. Chap Clark, who's the co-author of the Sticky Faith book, says that for years, youth and children's ministry have operated on the 5-to-1 ratio, that we have 5 youth for every adult leader or chaperone. Instead, Clark suggests that we need to create a ratio of 5 adults for every youth in the church. Now, not all those adults would have a relationship as close as the friend and faith relationship, but they would be adults that the youth is certain know him by name. Someone who can ask, how's it going? Someone the youth knows is praying for them, with the goal being that every time a child or youth walks through the gathering place on Sunday morning after worship, they'd be greeted by name by at least 5 adults. Many of you know Tony Dungy. He was the former Super Bowl winning head coach in the NFL. He tells a story of his son when his son started playing high school football. Tony noticed that his son was barely getting up in time to get the bus in the morning and wasn't eating any breakfast, didn't bother to eat much before he left the house. Tony urged him to get up earlier and start his day off right with a good breakfast. The son said, "Don't worry about it, Dad." So each morning during the first week of football practice, Dungy would wake up and urge his son to eat a breakfast, like, "You're going to need that energy later in the day." And always the response was, "Don't worry about it, Dad." Well, next week on Monday, Tony came into the kitchen in the morning and his son was sitting there eating cereal and eggs and toast and juice. And Tony kind of patted himself on the back, seeing that his years of professional football coaching experience had finally been recognized by his son. So he kind of casually mentioned it to him. "Oh, I see you're eating breakfast today." "Yeah," the son said. "Coach said eating a good breakfast is the best way to start the day." So, as parents, we all know the truth of this story. No matter how much wisdom we have to impart to our own children, the reality is that they often hear it best from someone else. And that's one of the reasons I believe so much in the value of mission trips. Mission trips are really an amazing opportunity to focus on intergenerational relationships. Every crew has 5 or more youth and at least 2 adults who spend a week together doing construction or other service ministry. In reality, the completion of the job is a side effect of a week of intergenerational relationship. Today, this very day, Saturday, October 5th, we had 5 crews of youth and adults out in the community doing green team jobs as a fundraiser for youth missions. These jobs varied from yard work to pressure washing and sealing a deck, painting and installing shutters. We had roughly 20 youth give up at least 4 or more hours of their Saturday to work to raise money for the church. Now, yes, they are earning money for a future mission trip for themselves, but I have had quite a few parents come up to me and say, "I don't see how you do it. I can't get my kid to clean up his room, let alone work in the yard at our house, but he'll get up early on a Saturday to go out all day and work with his friends." The reality is that this happened because of the relationship that's been formed between the youth and the adults that lead these crews. In the end, sticky faith isn't a youth ministry or a children's ministry or a parent problem. It's a church problem. We can't facilitate a 5-to-1 adult ratio without involving the whole church. I hope that each of you will join in this journey as we seek to help everyone grow a faith that sticks. Amen.